So Trump officially nominated Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court justice. And so obviously there's, people have a lot of takes on her because she is considered like this conservative judge, and that is the whole big thing now with the election, right? That, the Supreme Court is going to go to the conservatives, and we're just going to, go up in flames, I guess, the moment that happens. Even though technically we've had a conservative leaning court for many decades now. It's not, it wouldn't be now that we all of a sudden have a predominantly conservative court. But the thing that is, to me, the most interesting about her as a nominee is the fact that she is a very devout Catholic. And she is a part of this, I guess what they're called, charismatic Catholic groups.
No, they're called covenant communities. That's the term.
Oh, okay. Well, I just heard them called.
I mean, it's a charismatic Catholic group, but it's actually not limited to Catholics. The group.
Oh, okay. Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's like 80% Catholics, but they have you have to believe in, like, Jesus or whatever, but it's like 20% are Protestants as well. So it's part of that charismatic movement. So there's also like, so these evangelical Christians, on the Protestant side could also potentially be members of this. It's not actually a church itself; it's just a group.
Okay, and they're called Praise.
People of Praise.
People of Praise, yeah. And what is a little alarming about this group is, first of all, that they are a secretive group, right?
Right.
And they've been considered like a cult, or they've been called a cult. I guess one, because of their secretiveness, right? But also because they're supposed to like pledge loyalty, like lifetime loyalty to this group. And like what is most alarming to me is the fact that if you are part of this, for the women, you, especially married women, are to be subservient to their husband, right? Their husband is the head of the household and also the advisor of the wife, right? And as the head of the household, that person also has an advisor who is someone in this group, right? Who they advise on things like how to decorate your house, your finances. I mean, it's a very wide scope of things that they advise on, right? And the fact that obviously, she didn't have any say in Roe versus Wade previously, but now if she does become the Supreme Court justice, which most likely she will, because they always put up a fight, but they end up approving them anyway. So I don't know, what do you guys think about like all this stuff?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. Are you familiar with Ro Khanna's bill? He's proposing a reform of the Supreme Court, which obviously is not going to get anywhere unless Biden, or even if Biden wins, and it may require a constitutional amendment. But what Ro Khanna is proposing is an 18-year term limit on Supreme Court justices, so that after 18 years they would be forced to step down. And he's saying that each president in their first and third year should nominate a Supreme Court justice. So if there is an opening, they already have someone nominated. And I don't know if this idea is going to go anywhere, but the Constitution doesn't really specify the number of justices on the Supreme Court. It's kind of vague in terms of how the Supreme Court is constituted. And I think it is actually time to consider a reform of the Supreme Court. It wasn't always 9 justices. It was, I think it was 5 at one point. And FDR famously tried to pack the court and tried to expand the Supreme Court. It didn't happen.
Well, I think both sides have talked about doing that various times. When it doesn't lean their way, they talk about adding 5 justices or something.
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean, if they push something through that's seen as a violation of the Constitution, then then the Supreme Court will strike it down, even if you have a supermajority of Democrats after the election, after next year. So it remains to be seen. But I thought it was interesting he's proposing that.
So I would say that I generally would agree with the idea of not leaving it up to this randomness of when a judge gets a disease or dies, then suddenly there's this opportunity for a president. I think like something that's a more regular time frame, like we're kind of talking about, 18 years, 20 years, whatever would be. 18 years is probably to make it so if, it's I don't know, whatever.
It would be staggered, right? It would be
staggered, I guess, right. So I think that makes a lot of sense rather than waiting. Then you'd have like a regular turnover, and it probably would reflect the ideals of the voters better, because it would more reflect, there would be a more regular chance to replace judges, and you would more regularly have whoever was just elected, the Senate and so forth, and the president would have their.
I mean, it's always whoever.
I do believe that makes sense.
It's always whoever is getting screwed by the current, in the current situation is going to come up with this proposel. So,
but that's not bad. Rather than Supreme Court packing, now we need 5 liberal judges. The idea that I think that makes it fairer for both sides. I think I actually like that.
Republicans have benefited big time in the last, decade, and they're not going to necessarily support this. But if you had a Democratic supermajority and Democratic president for like 8 years, and they started appointing these, whatever, just for sake of argument, left wing justices, then all of a sudden the Republicans would support this, and the Democrats would probably be opposed to it. So it has to be a bipartisan thing where they come together on that. And I think it is, rather than just like blatantly packing the court, I think it's a more nuanced, rational proposal, to do something like that, like an 18-year term. Because people live longer now, and it's like, back in the 18th century or 19th century, they only were on the court for whatever 10 years, right? Mm-hmm. Because the life expectancy just wasn't that long in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Whereas now you try to appoint somebody who's in their 40s and they're going to be on the court for 40 years. It kind of perverts the whole intention of it. And
you absolutely have a potential now for a situation where somebody is, basically has like onset of dementia, and there's this big pressure. Don't leave, because right now, if you leave, we'll have the other people will get to have a pick or whatever like that, right? And that plays both ways, of course.
Right.
I think it makes perfectly good sense to have some kind of limit like that.
Right. I mean, it's become so partisan.
Really,
go ahead.
It misses the point that the Supreme Court is not supposed to be politicized, right? And you're not supposed to have like this ideological like dogma, when you're a Supreme Court justice, right? You're supposed to uphold the law.
Right.
Like that's what your job is. It's not about, oh, well, I'm a conservative and I have my beliefs, so I'm going to interject. They're not supposed to do that. That's the whole point.
I'm sorry, let me take a closer look. What planet are you on?
Yeah.
Well, they do. I mean, like, for instance, John Roberts supported the Affordable Care Act, so there's, sometimes they do go against what you'd expect them to do, right? So it's not like there's no guarantee because you appoint or get a conservative justice in there that they're going to vote a certain way on issues.
Or even you don't even have to go that far back. You can go to Neil Gorsuch recently. He ruled for native tribes, for the land in Oklahoma. That ruling was he was the one who wrote the ruling on that. So right. I mean, and it wasn't expected that he would go that way, but he did. And obviously, we know, Neil Gorsuch.
The rhetoric and
the
rhetoric and the actions of like every politician in our government shows that they don't believe that it's a non-political, simply calling balls and strikes position. So there's no reason that we as voters, should have faith that that's how it works.
I was just disappointed that, of Mitch McConnell being so disingenuous. Like in 2016, I mean, saying that let the American people decide and wait until after the election. I mean, why not just come out and say, you know, we have the power to block this. We support conservative justice. We're going to do this. You know, that would have been much
Right.
more. I would have respected that a lot more if they were just honest about it. And now they could say, well, we can just vote instead of having to now to say,
he's
well,
a politician.
yeah,
Honesty, politician.
I know,
Right.
but like I mean, is every politician isn't the same. You know, I don't put Tulsi and Mitch McConnell in the same, you know, category. I think there's some politicians who are more honest than others. You know, some of us are more equal than others, whatever. But maybe it sounds kind of Orwellian. But I think there is something to be said for. I just really disgusted with his
But when you add
4 years ago.
all the again the distrust between the two sides and the peer pressure to pile on the other side on the Supreme Court thing, I mean, you're just going to have people that are usually complete liars are just going to be even shock themselves in their ability to twist facts. You know.
Now, I assume she's a Federalist Society member too, because all the judges that have been appointed by McConnell, they're basically all the Federalist Society puts these lists forward and they get appointed, and they basically subscribe to these conservative principles. And I would assume she's on that. I don't want to say that for a fact. I know she's spoken before the Federalist Society. I don't know if she actually is a member of it, but I wouldn't be at all surprised.
I think the three things that I've seen that she is like against, so she's anti-abortion. She is against the death penalty, which I don't hold against her, but apparently some people do. And she's like anti-immigration. So you know, they're going to push the whole DACA thing.
Is that expressed, those views? Like I went looking for her previous rulings on like abortion, and the thing I found was that she ruled I think she actually wrote like a the unanimous judgment that was basically that kids under 18 couldn't get abortions without their parents being notified, and this is one of the things that people on the left are pointing to, like, oh, she's horrific, she's going to turn over Roe v. Wade. No, that's a not quite turning over all rights to abortion kind of thing.
Although I would expect her to vote in favor of overturning Roe v. Wade. I mean, that's what they want, right? I would expect that.
I think ultimately what it comes doan to is that she has personally come out and said that she is staunchly anti-abortion, right? And when she was in a hearing, Dianne Feinstein questioned her and, you know, said, you know, questioned like her, like the fact that she's so dogmatic about her beliefs. And she even said, she was like, you know, for this position, I wouldn't have a chance to speak on Roe versus Wade. And so it's like, okay, but now you will, you know, technically.
Right, but so you're saying
he is going to be approved no matter what.
But you're saying, like, so now you were talking before the way judges should act, I guess. You're like, so you wouldn't trust her to like call balls and strikes and say this is a precedent, and therefore I don't have any overwhelming reason to overturn it. I know she's an originalist, so she might bring in that thinking that, well, the founding fathers didn't think that, you know, I don't know.
I don't know. I think that to a certain extent, obviously the left is going to attack her in every which way. They're going to take everything and turn it into a much bigger deal than what it really is. And like an example of that is like the whole thing with, you know, comparing the group that she is a part of to a cult. You know, the big thing was the whole handmaiden thing, right? The fact that the advisor for the male is called the head, and the advisor for the female or for the single female, because obviously if you're married, your husband is your advisor. Is a handmaiden, and they were saying
was a handmaid. They changed the terminology.
And that Margaret Atwood supposedly, you know, that she may have used this information.
Newsweek basically originally put out that article. Everyone sucked it up, and Newsweek contradicted that, basically.
Well, technically, she did an interview with Politico saying that she's not sure whether or not, whether it was because it's supposed to be people of praise right?
Yeah,
And
right.
People of Hope is the other group that supposedly that's the group that she actually based the book on, The Handmaid's
yeah,
Tale. But she says that she's not sure because the notes that she has are like locked away somewhere, and because of this pandemic, she's not able to access her notes. So she personally has been asked about this and has said that she is not sure which group it is that she based this book off of. But either way, the fact that obviously the left is going to take something like
right,
this and run with it,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so, so I have a couple comments around this whole thing. To me, like if you look at, I don't know. First of all, I don't know. Maybe this is a crazy cult, but John F. Kennedy was treated the same way, right? He's gonna be the handmaiden for the Pope, right? The Catholic, and so if you read the Bible and if you just go ahead and you read the Bible about what it says in there, you can find 1,000 reasons to never elect any Catholic because it says the woman has to be, I find it kind of ridiculous that somebody that's, makes decisions that
Right.
affects millions of people, men and women, every day is, she has like a micro, an earpiece and has her husband calling her in, telling her what to do all the time. It seems like a horrific slander of a woman that should be seen as an inspiring, strong woman. Right.
Right. Well,
To
she's
one
obviously
degree, to one degree.
very,
And I want to bring up one more thing real quick. I'll
sure,
slide
go
this in
ahead.
there. The other thing is, I think it's really dumb of the Democrats to attack her on Catholicism. 50% of Latinos are Catholics in
Right.
the U.S. And right now that is Trump's edge.
Yeah.
So I don't know, is he being crazy like a fox again, or is it dumb? I think that again, the Democrats are being incredibly stupid at exactly the wrong time.
Right. Yeah, she's actually I should mention she's a product of I think she's from South Bend or grew up in South Bend, Indiana, which is the home of University of Notre Dame, with a very very conservative Catholic school. One
Which
of the main
Mike Pence was the governor of Indiana, I think, right? He comes from
uh,
Indiana.
Okay.
yeah, he's from Indiana as well, and it's actually South Bend is considered a liberal enclave within the state of Indiana, but it's actually the university is very conservative. I have a family member who actually is the head of the department there, and he says it's more conservative than Boston College in terms of like a Catholic school, and she's part of this. And I did read the Wikipedia article about People of Praise, which is actually very, it's not mentioned any controversy or anything. So it's probably, my guess is it written by somebody from People of Praise. And one of the things they mention is that they work, they do service in inner cities. And the inner cities to me is always a euphemism for brown and black skinned people.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's like, this is a rich suburban organization that does, outreach, like,
diversity outreach, right?
Diversity outreach, right? But it's she's very conservative. She's very, very privileged. Obviously, very smart. I mean, she graduated summa cum laude from.
And they adopted
a
Haitian girl as well.
Yeah, they have 5 children, biological children, and 2 adopted girls from Haiti.
Yeah.
So she's obviously living. She's living her beliefs. She's not just talking; she's actually walking the walk. But I think this is all about Roe v. Wade. Personally, this appointment. I think it's pandering to the Hispanic population for the election, but in a longer term, Republicans
so.
And the evangelicals.
Well, yeah.
Well,
but
no, it's not evangelical. Right. It's actually
evangelicals. They already have.
They already have.
But he obviously needs to continue to pander to that base always.
Well, you're right, because you're right. That's right. As well as now also pulling in Catholics, as you're saying, Steve, for Hispanics in a lot of cases, right? Yeah. I mean, personally, the idea of anyone being religious and judging law scares me anyway. But but that's where we're still there.
They see themselves as part of the body of Christ. So ultimately, that the real law is above the Constitution. It's the biblical law or whatever, the law of God or whatever. And that's nothing new really, but that's where she's coming from. And obviously she's a very intelligent person. I mean, she's not like a Harriet Miers, right? Like, remember George W. appointed basically as secretary or something, and she even Republicans couldn't get behind her. But she's obviously, this person is very qualified as far as legal, academic background and experience and everything. She obviously is probably going to vote against abortion, right? I mean, it seems pretty clear that that's where it's going to go. But I would just want to mention too, like in the historical perspective, in 1856, there was a Dred Scott decision, and I think Chief Justice was Roger Taney, who was out and out racist figure, and he basically said that black people aren't humans and they don't deserve. They could be property. And then the Civil War ensued 4 years later. So just because you have a conservative, and I'm not comparing her to Roger Taney, I think she's a lot more sophisticated and smart, but just saying that the Supreme Court isn't the end all and be all and end all of everything. I think somebody's just exaggerated the power of the Supreme Court.
It's being used as a political tool, like everything else right now.
Right. I mean, the question is,
again, it's not supposed to be.
How would she rule on Citizens United? That's the question. Like, would she? To me, that's really important. Would she say this is unfair because I believe in the sanctity of life or whatever? So I believe in the sanctity of one man, one vote, and one person, one vote.
Are you saying that we should scrutinize her on her rulings instead of like her personal life, like what they did to Kavanaugh?
Well, I don't know.
That's what I tried. Like I said, that's what I tried to do.
Any of his rulings?
I tried to actually say, I was looking at Twitter, I'm like, this is ridiculous. And I went to see, look up her actual rulings on abortion and on some corporations things. She ruled in favor of Grubhub because people are like, oh, she's a corporate tool. But it's like the Grubhub workers were trying to somehow get a ruling in their favor saying that they engage in interstate commerce. And I'm like, if she... which obviously predominantly they wouldn't, right? I mean, how many people are coming? So I don't know. So in reading, if you we advise our watchers, whoever's out there, if there's anybody, to go look up her rulings and use that as a judgment. And you could read them and you can go either way as far as I'm concerned.
Well, Jim, it's a moot point anyways because we don't have a vote in this, right? It's going to happen no matter what.
Oh, and speaking of votes, last time when she went for the 7th Court of Appeals, it was, it went down party lines except for 3 Democrats, including Tim Kaine, voted in favor of her.
I mean, they always vote, and they have been fast tracking all of Trump's judges this whole time.
Yes.
So it's just, this is all for show. It's all BS,
Yeah.
It's all just to get all those people with Trump derangement syndrome, when Ruth Bader Ginsberg passed away, that was the whole thing. It was like, oh my God, the Supreme Court, now we all definitely have to go and vote.
You have to send money into the DNC. You have to send money to the DCCC because RGB
died. Millions of dollars.
Yeah.
It's a fundraising opportunity for them.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's it.
And that's what Trump is. So that's why I'm not sure. I still don't know whether or not with Biden going up against Trump in this debate on Tuesday, if that happens, Pelosi is still saying he shouldn't do it. I don't know. I don't know if they really want Biden to win or not.
Do you want to talk about
because of course she doesn't want to debate Shahid Buttar, so.
You want to talk?
That's right.
She can't tell somebody to go and debate if she's not willing to do it herself.
That's right.